Hello, friends. Welcome to Science Talk. I'm your host, Jim Massa. Want to discuss with you in this video segment the perils that penguins are now facing. Not only as the temperatures increase, but changes in the wind, which will then impact, as we're going to discuss here, the sea ice. Now, for those of you who are Monty Python fans, you probably might remember that in some of the sketches uh, they did some fun things about penguins. I remember one segment was like, "Penguins, those flightless web-footed little bastards," or "What's the penguin doing on the telly?" Well, eat the course the penguin. Well, that was funny, and I'm a huge Python fan. Just to be clear, what the penguins are facing now is no laughing matter. We're finding that new weather patterns in the Antarctic as it warms are leaving thousands of penguins in peril. And there are now calls being made that they need to be specifically protected. So British scientists are saying that the Antarctic continent is warming with unparalleled speed, and this may result in the birds having nowhere to breed. And they looked at it, for example, specifically number of emperor penguins. And they're saying that the number of emperors could be reduced by more than half by 2010. Philip Traithen, who is head of conservation biology at the British Antarctic Survey in Cambridge. BAS is an institute that does a ton of research in the Antarctic region. And he says that the current rate of warming in parts of the Antarctic is greater than anything in the recent glaciological record. Though emperor penguins have experienced periods of warming and cooling over their evolutionary history, the current rates of warming are unprecedented. I have stressed many, many times, it's not just the warming, it's the rate of warming, it's the rate of change that is the critical concept here. It's increasing much, much faster than organisms have time to adapt for. And that therein lies the problem. Dr. Traithen continues, currently we have no idea how the emperors will adjust to the loss of their primary breeding habitat, sea ice. Now, emperor penguins, they're kind of tall. Not overly agile, as I'm sure many of you can understand if you look at them on land. Extremely hydrodynamic in the ocean. They're very well suited for moving about in the ocean. On land, that's another story. And if they try to climb on shore, if they try to move across, steep, landforms, what have you, or terrain, bit of a challenge. For breeding, they depend upon sea ice. And as the world warms, the high probability this will decrease. Without it, they will have little or no breeding habitat. Just as we're losing sea ice in the Arctic, which now inhibits greatly the polar bear's ability to hunt seals, imperiling their numbers here. Well, not only are we losing sea ice in the Arctic, we're losing sea ice that surrounds the Antarctic continent. This is different than whatever glacial ice calves off the land glaciers into the sea. We're talking about actual sea ice, the ocean waters itself freezing to form the sea ice, brine rejection, right? That is disappearing. And that is putting the emperor penguins in peril. So a study was published in the journal Biological Conservation. It was an international team of researchers, which Dr. Traithen was the principal investigator. And in this study, they recommend various measures that can and should be taken to protect and conserve the penguins. Current climate change projections indicate that rising temperatures and changing wind patterns will damage the sea ice on which the emperors breed. And some studies showing populations likely fall by more than 50% over the century. I mentioned that earlier. because if you have wind patterns, right? Well, you don't. Not if you have wind patterns, and the way the winds blow will help compact or mash together sea ice. If the wind changes, then the sea ice can be dispersed, blown apart. I'll share with you a story. This is an actual thing. In Alaska, there was the diphtheria outbreak in the village of Nome, which is located right in the Bering Strait there. And this is before the discovery of penicillin. So there was a serum that helps alleviate some of the symptoms. It was called a choker because it tended to swell the throat and affected children, and it basically close off their airways, choke them to death. Kind of horrible. So it was decided to have a relay of dog sled teams to bring the serum to Nome. Some serum was found in Anchorage. They put it on a train. The train went to Nenana, which is a trading post it's located 55 miles south of Fairbanks. And from there, they had a relay of mushers. And the musher would take the serum, off they go, down the trail with the dog teams to a checkpoint. Well, not a checkpoint, but basically to like a roadhouse. There, pass the serum off to the next musher who was waiting, and off they go. Kind of had this relay. And typically, most of the runs were no more than 50 miles. Well, there was a famous musher by the name of Leonard Seppala, who's a Norwegian immigrant. He was the one that basically helped develop what's now called the Alaskan Malamute breed. So when you look at the Malamutes and you see the typical body conformation and one brown, one blue eye, or two blue eyes, whatever, and a certain conformation of their body, we can thank Leonard Seppala for that. And he was winning races with the small dogs versus the big, heavy freight dogs. He was just winning every damn race. And he was widely recognized as the best musher going. So it was decided that he should travel from Nome, go down to meet the teams coming up from the other direction. And to save time, he cut across Norton Sound. Now, going across Norton Sound is extremely dangerous. And by the way, this is the basis for the Iditarod sled dog race. It really commemorates the serum run. But now they start in Anchorage. They did. They had the ceremonial start in Anchorage. They moved to Wasilla, and off they go, and they go to Nome. Well, Seppala, with his lead dog Togo, who was a brilliant dog, who was 14 years old at the time of his run. He was basically Seppala's main lead dog, who was winning all the races. And he would just let Togo do his thing. He wouldn't even give him any commands. Togo knew what he was doing. And they came across. They met up with the musher. So he grabbed the serum, turn around, and head back across Norton Sound. He was thinking of even going further out onto the sea ice to cut some distance and cut some time down to get to Nome faster. Well, he happened to talk to an elderly native gentleman who warned him, said, the wind is shifting. Don't go as far out as you're thinking. He listened to this gentleman. Now, he's going out at night. This is January. This is also one of the coldest winters ever. Temperatures like minus 65 Fahrenheit. It was, or worse. Wind chills to 100 below Fahrenheit. This is in January. It was really snotty conditions. January, very low light levels to begin with. So off he goes, and he hugged a line that was not so far out, to see. As the light levels come up, and he looks to what would be to his left or to the west, and he sees open water. Had he gone on the original route that he was planning, he would have, because the wind shifted, it blew the sea ice out to wherever it blew it out to. The serum would have been lost. So There's a really excellent book if you ever want to read up about it. It's called The Cruelest Miles, and it discusses that whole serum run. But winds can move sea ice around, is what I'm trying to tell you here. So if you've got changing temperatures, changing pressure gradient, you're going to change wind pattern, and changing wind pattern will affect, the wind blows on the surface, called fetch. It will change surface currents. It will change. When it's changing surface currents, it changes how the ice reacts to that. So we can blow the ice together or apart. And that's basically what they're getting at here when they're talking about the wind changes, wind pattern changes. So, just to give you a little background, before breeding, males and females build up their body reserves. Females will lay a single egg, and basically the males will fast and incubate the egg. And where they incubate the eggs is the egg is not on the ice, it will freeze. They put it on their top of their feet, and then they have a flap of skin that basically they wrap the egg in. And underneath that flap of skin is their bare skin. Of course, it's protected by the outer fur, feathers and blubber, but it's in direct contact with their body heat to provide warmth to the developing egg. In the process of doing this, the males lose a lot of body weight because the energy goes into incubating this egg. So while the males are doing that, the females are off feeding. So, and then the females return and have a little swapping of duties, if you will, and then they raise the chick. They take turns bringing back food to feed the chick, and so on and so forth. Now, emperors are unique among birds because they breed on seasonal Antarctic sea ice. One of the few birds, the only bird I think of that do such a thing. But they need the sea ice to be stable. Because what's another thing that happens? They molt. They can't go into the water while they're molting. The feathers are not waterproof. They'll freeze. So now if you have unstable sea ice, right, you can see not only you're going to decrease the success rate of raising a chick, but you're increasing the likelihood of increased mortality among the adults. So the researchers are recommending that a group called the IUCN, and I'm looking for what the acronym is. I had it earlier. I don't have the IUCN, what it stands for, but probably international something. They recommend that the IUCN status for the species be raised from near threatened to vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. So what are the researchers recommending? They're recommending that the protective status for the species be raised from near threatened to vulnerable. Okay. They say improvements in climate change forecasting of impacts on Antarctic wildlife would help, and recommend emperors be listed in the Antarctic Treaty as a specially protected species. Better protection will let scientists coordinate research into the penguin's resilience to a range of different threats and stressors. Dr. Peter Fretwell, who is a remote sensing specialist at BAS, British Antarctic Survey, also a co-author of this study, says some colonies of emperor penguins may not survive the coming decades, so we must work to give as much protection as we can to the species to give them the best chance. The UK was one of the countries which notified the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting in 2019 in July that emperor penguins were threatened by the loss of their breeding habitat. Further protection was needed. A similar paper has also been submitted to the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, CCAMLR, basically recommending the same thing. So emperor penguins are facing loss of their breeding habitat. This increases the risk to their chicks that they're trying to successfully raise, increasing mortality of chicks. But this is also the time of year that they molt. If they don't have a steady, stable sea ice platform, because they can't go into the water when they're molting, because they have no waterproofing protection, that will imperil them and will kill them. So all these factors are working to reduce the emperor penguin population overall. And all because of rapidly changing conditions due to climate change caused by human burning of fossil fuels. Seeing changes in wind patterns especially, increasing temperatures. Of course, if you have increasing temperatures, less sea ice will form in the first place to begin with. So it's not looking good for the emperors. Thank you for your time. Hello folks, this is Jim here with Science Talk, asking you to please subscribe to my channel and to inform others of my channel and of the work that I do. Please share to social media platforms that you use. Also, as a reminder, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I load up more videos. Finally, I ask that you support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your support.